Now we have the get all books and we have the add book method. But what if we want to retrieve only one book? How can we do that? There are multiple ways of doing that. Let me show you all of them right here. So rather than get all books, I will create a method get book. Let me press Ctrl dot here and generate that method here. We need our DB context here, and then we want to retrieve a book right there. We have the book object there, and if we go to context.book, we have something called as first. What this will do is it will retrieve the first book. Let me see that in action. I will comment out the get all book here. I do not want that right now. And let me execute this. Great. The statement that gets executed is select top 1. That is good. Let me log that as well. And let me execute that once again. And perfect. It logs that book right here. Now if we switch back to database, and if we notice book, the first one is spider without duty. That is what we retrieved. But if we examine the Fluent book, we do not have any book in there. So let me see what happens when we execute first on the Fluent book. To do that, we will have to change the DB set here to Fluent book. And rather than book here, let me just call this as variable. Let me add a debugging point and run the application. We hit our breakpoint here, and if I press F10, I will see an exception this time. Perfect. You can see sequence contained no element and it throws an exception. If you do not see that, try to add a try-catch block and you will notice the exception. So right here, let me catch the exception. Let me add the exception E here, and let me add the debugging point right here. Perfect. We get the exception. Sequence contains no elements. When we are using first here, it always expects one record to be returned. If it does not return a record, it throws an exception. But if we do not want that to throw an exception, we have something called as first or default. Let me add a debugging point in the console.writeLine when we are using first or default and run the application. You can see the query is executed here and it returns back the book is null this time. When we use first or default, if no records are found, it returns null. But when we use first and if no records are found, then it throws an exception. So that is the difference between first and first or default. Now if you press F10, this line will throw an exception because book is null here and we are trying to access title and ISBN. So we have to check if the book is not null, only then we will log that. But we don't want to go into that detail. I wanted to show you the difference between first and first or default. Let me change this back to the books where we have the records, and that way we should be able to retrieve the record. Let me see that. Perfect, we retrieve the book here and that looks good. With that configured, let me explore this a little bit more in the next video.